Thank you for inviting me to your meeting. Today we're going to talk about Windows 7 end of life. What are my options? This presentation is in conjunction with the APCUG's Speakers Bureau, and this is one of your club's many benefits of APCUG membership. My name is John Kennedy. I am APCUG's Regional Advisor for Regions 3 and 6, Midwest and Upper Plains. I am also a member of the APCUG's Speakers Bureau. We want to begin at the beginning. Windows 7 came out in October of 2009, which means that this is a 10-year-old operating system. The sales of PCs pre-installed with Windows was stopped in 2014, a year after Windows 8.1 came out. So as in most of life, there is a beginning and there is an end. Back in 2015, Microsoft actually stopped supporting Windows 7. And during the past 5 years, they've been only sending out security updates. There's been no additional programs, no additional features, just security to keep it safe. But now in 2020, you're getting it nothing at all. No feature updates haven't been getting. No security updates. Nothing, period. So what are your options now that Microsoft no longer supports Windows 7? Option 0, and I start at 0 because option 0 is to stay with Windows 7. Yes, you could continue to run Windows 7. You won't get any improvements or upgrades, but you still have all your software, the programs that you like, all of your files. You can still use that computer. The concern is that no future security problems, if they are found, will be fixed. And there still are. After 10 years, there are still being found security leaks, and hackers are really going to go after this because they know that when it's found, Microsoft's not going to do anything about it. You will be at risk using the computer online or even offline. And that's because even offline, you can get viruses from thumb drives and optical drives, disks that go to your machine. So you can disconnect your 7 from the internet and never put a disk or a thumb drive into it. And you probably will be safe. But what good's a computer that doesn't have internet access? I can remember the days when we had computers and we didn't have internet access. The other big concern is that little by little, software developers will stop supporting Windows 7. My son is in a business of the recording industry and music composition, and he has that problem in that one of the software programs that he uses, it will no longer be upgraded for Windows 7. So the copy he's using isn't out of date. If he wants the newest features for that program, he'll have to do something else. Option 1, after Windows 7, we had Vista and then Windows 8, and that moved quickly to Windows 8.1. So you can install Windows 8.1 on your computer It'll cost you between $100, $154 if you can find it, because officially it's no longer for sale by Microsoft, but it's on Amazon. So you can buy that and then install it. The problem is you might not have the programs you had before. And your present computer and software might not even be supported by Windows 8, depending on how long you've had this computer. To take care of that, you would have to buy hardware, software, and you might not want to spend that money. The desktop interface is a bit different on Windows 8.1 than you were used to in 7. 8 was totally different, and that's why it was trashed by the public. So 8.1 is a little bit better because it's kind of like 2 different desktops in one. And if you work on it, you can make it almost look and work like 7. But this is not only a temporary, because Windows 8.1, its end of life comes in 2023. So you can continue for 3 years after putting in this money for new software and possibly some upgrade to your hardware. And in 3 years, you're going to be back in the same situation. So option 2, which is the option that Microsoft wants you to do, is install Windows 10 on your computer. If you go check the pricing, Windows 10 will cost you somewhere between $130, $200, depending on whether you get Home or Pro and where you purchase it from. However, you may still have the problem that your computer and software won't be supported by Windows 10, and you'll need to spend money on upgrades to those. And again, you might not want to spend that extra money. Windows 10 has upgrades, or updates they call it, that comes out every 6 months. And it's actually, in my opinion, an upgrade, because when you do this big upgrade, changes to your computer take place. New things are added, things are taken away. So it's really not the same Windows 10 that you started with. Something new that I discovered just recently is that these builds have a life expectancy themselves, 18 months, which means that if you install 1904 back last year, it will be good for 18 months, which means that you could skip the 1909. You can skip the new one coming out in 2004, but you will have to update to 2009 or Microsoft will no longer support you. The other big concern is that if you have a computer that's getting to be around 10 years old, Microsoft may no longer support that old of a hardware. Our computer club had that concern because we have computers that we use for teaching, and they were becoming almost 10 years old. And so we didn't want to take a chance on Windows 10 no longer being supported on that computer. So we did the next option. Still with Windows 10, your current software might not be compatible with 10. I just read an article that said, I think Office 2010 is going to be put out to pasture this year. It might have been in one of the newer ones, I'm not quite sure, but even software goes out. And some of that software will then no longer work on the newer versions of 10, those new builds. With installing Windows 10, you might not want to learn a different workflow, and Windows 10 has a different workflow with the desktop than Windows 7. People are using it. People have gotten used to using it, but the design, the desktop, it's a little different. You might not want to have to learn that. You might be concerned with Windows 10 over your lack of control and that Big Brother is watching you too much. With all of the policies and privacy things with 10, you might say, I don't want to deal with that. And you don't want to spend any money or deal with his issues because, you know, the computer you are using is working just fine. Option 3, which is what our computer club did, option 3 was to purchase a new computer. And of course, that cost us hundreds of dollars for each computer. But on the positive side, you'll have support and updates for about 10 years because you're starting new with Microsoft. But you also run into the problems that if you have printers and scanners and other devices like that, they might not work with the newest Windows 10. Even with a new computer, old hardware may not work, so you'll end up having to spend money to move that up. And I won't repeat all those slides, but now that you have Windows 10, go back and review all of the points from the previous section in option 2, because they're all still apply here. The only difference is you're going to have to be spending more money to get a new computer than you did before. There's a fourth option. The fourth option, as you can see on the picture with the Apple Byte, you can move to a Mac. You may have to learn a slightly new way of doing things because Mac does things just a little bit different than what Windows does. Additional devices, well, the ones you have currently won't work with your new Mac because Mac and Apple have to be identical. So you'll have to go out and buy a new Apple printer, a new Apple scanner, a new Apple mouse, maybe even a new Apple keyboard. I'm not quite sure what all will or won't work. Now the Mac Mini, most recent price, was quoted at $799 for the Mini. But that doesn't include keyboard, mouse, monitor, which you kind of have to have. So if you go out and buy that, your $799 Mac Mini now is over $1,800. You can go with an iMac. That's an all-in-one. It'll cost you nearly $1,100. And then you also have to be concerned about the problems of all-in-ones. When one part of it goes bad, then you might lose everything. Our other option to take a look at, number 5, has the little penguin. And we know that the window picture is the logo for Microsoft Windows. The apple with the bite out of it is Apple's Macs. The little penguin, this is Tux. Tux is the mascot logo for Linux. So you could migrate on your current computer to Linux, and it won't cost you anything because Linux is free. Linux runs well on new and old computers. The key is that it runs well on old computers. Linux has access to hundreds and hundreds of software titles that are free. There might be some programs that you could buy. There might be programs that you could donate to. But for the most part, the programs are free. One of the really nice things about Linux is that you can try it out. You don't even have to do anything to your Windows computer. You can just run a live operating system off of a thumb drive or off of a DVD and test out without even making any changes to your computer. It won't hurt it at all. Linux gives you great control over your experience. It's open and there is nothing hidden, and you have all the controls. It does what you want it to do. It doesn't do what you don't want it to do. The Linux support for your computer can go on for years. Some of the Linux can go 5 years without having to be upgraded. You'll still get security updates, but you can go 5 years. Some Linux are called rolling releases, and that means that you're getting updates all the time in the background, and that means it's going to be supported and supported. Linux is open source, which means that all of the code to write for Linux is open for anybody's viewing. That makes it the most secure of the popular operating systems. If a virus would happen to try to get into Linux, it would be discovered almost immediately, because there are people who taken upon their hobby as to examine code looking for something that gets in, and out it goes. There are many versions, or what we call distros, of Linux, not like the one version of Windows Macs. If you don't like the version of Linux you're running, there's a ton of other choices. If you don't like Windows, there is no other choice. There's only one Windows. And actually, Linux can look very much like Windows if you want it to, because Linux is developed by people and redesigned. And so somebody has said, okay, we're going to create a Linux that looks like Windows. So what is Linux? Maybe you've never heard about it before. Maybe you have, and you just kind of wonder. So what is this Tux Penguin Linux? It's just a computer operating system, similar to Windows and Macs. The roots come from years ago when we had the Unix system for computers, and someone wanted kind of like a free version of basing it off of Unix. It was actually created by somebody who was doing a graduate project just for himself, and it hit so well, it just blossomed. Linux got its development start back in '83, and it finally was kind of like became born in 1991. So that's about the time Windows 3. And so it's been around a good long time. The actual users started using in '93 with 2 versions of Linux called Slackware and Debian at about the same time as Windows 3.1. So it's been out there. People have been using it as long as 3.1. With cars, you have choices. These are the 3 big Detroit ones back in the days, and they each had choices in their own divisions. With cars, there became more choices, as you can see with these. And there are others. And as we know from General Motors and Ford and Chrysler, some have come, some have gone. There are cars that we used to drive that aren't even made anymore. And there are new cars that are out there. With Linux, you have choices. These are the 3 original distributions of Linux. That was back in the '93s. Slackware, Debian, and Red Hat. Each of them have branches of the original, where people have said, we're going to take the, I call it recipe for Slackware, and we're going to modify it some way. And we've got coming out with other ones. Excuse me. The same thing with Debian, Red Hat, and these don't even show you the whole list of how many, because people have just been able to do it because it's free. There are more choices, Arch, Gentoo, and some of the things in their family tree. And just like with cars, there are lots of others. There's more than 100 plus versions of Linux, just like when you start to count up all the different kind of cars. And as cars, some of these have come, some of them have gone. Somebody has developed a Linux, but then due to some conditions or due to some circumstances can no longer maintain it, and so it goes away. Or sometimes somebody else picks up the ball and runs with it. But with Windows and Macs, you don't have any choices. And the Home Pro choice is not really a comparison, because Pro just adds some additional software keyed to the business. And then if you go to Enterprise, that adds some more software and security for the business. So in actuality, Windows only has one choice for a computer. Yes, you can move things around and change colors, but that's not what you would have in Linux. How do you work Linux? I've heard that it's so hard to use. Well, rumors get around. The regular normal Linux is no different than what you're doing. I use a keyboard. I use a mouse. You take your mouse and you click on the menu or start button. Choose your program. Run the program. Or I can even click on shortcut icons that might be on my taskbar, or a panel, as I call it. I can run multiple programs at the same time. I can go to the Software Center and store to get additional software or remove software you don't need. I can do anything or everything on the computer that you would do on a daily basis. In fact, Linux even runs some of the same programs like you do in Windows and Macs. So what does it look like? Again, I've heard stories that looks a lot different and complicated. Linux starts with the desktop environment, and that includes everything that is a part of your computer, what you see, and how you do things. Your file manager, the actual windows, the login screens, the menus, icons, panels, even some software. The key is that Linux is tailored to fit both the age of your PC hardware and the look and feel or the workflow you prefer to use on your desktop. Do you have an old Pantheon processor? Little bit of RAM, little bit of hardware storage. You want something that brings your aging computer back to life? There's a desktop environment for that. Do you have the other end, a modern PC, and love to endlessly customize and tweak your desktop? There's a desktop environment for that. Do you prefer the minimalism and behavior of the Mac? Well, there's a desktop environment that matches up to that. Do you want something that doesn't even remotely remind you of a Windows or a Mac OS? There's even a desktop environment for that. There's at least a dozen or more different desktop environments that people have created, again, to match the condition of your computer, or the specs of your computer, to match the workflow, whether you want something simple or something very complex. It's also possible that you can install more than one on your computer. And when you log in, you say, today I want to do the simple one, or today I want to do the complex one. There are some newer desktop environments that are combinations of different desktop environments. And so they've taken the best of this one, the best of this one, and put it together. And now we've got a totally new custom version. Many distros come pre-installed. They have all the software that you need right out of the box. But the thing about Linux is there are so many different softwares that do the same thing. You can choose, I want to stick with this one, I want to switch to this one. And because most everything is free, doesn't cost you to try things out. Let's look at a few examples of some of these desktop environments to give you an idea of the differences that you have to pick from. Xfce, one of the oldest and one of the most simple in terms of very functional, not a lot of specs required for this, but it works. As you can see, the desktop is a very simple one, but it can become customized. This one has a thing at the very top corner that's the start menu, and a few things at the other end for your time and your network. You can leave it at this, or you can even add things. Here's an example of the menu. The one big focus is that most of the menus in Linux are organized by categories. And so you can see here on the right-hand side, you can see the categories. Click on a category, and then they'll list you all the programs that are found in that category. Now, to go to the other extreme, you have KDE Plasma. That was the K desktop environment back in the early original ones. The Plasma is the new modern one. And this one would be like the Cadillac of them, that you can do so much. You can put so many different kind of widgets like we had in Windows, and customize and this and that. It's something that I haven't even mastered because it has so much it can offer you. It has a little bit of a different menu. You have choices at the bottom for your favorites and your applications and get to the computer. And some people like that one real well. Gnome, or Gnome, is another kind of desktop. This one, the screen that comes before what you see, is actually just the word activities at the top and the bar. There's nothing else. When you click activities, you get a panel that has your favorites, and the tic-tac-toe board down at the bottom, that links to your program. So when you click on it, your programs come up. Now, one of the things that some people don't like about the Gnome one is that all of theirs, all the programs are in one big bundle, alphabetical, and then you have to kind of go through alphabetically and find what you want. And for some people, that's a little bit hard, because some people say, I don't know what I want or what program until, I've learned it. Mate is another one, has a similar desktop situation, but as you can see, this one has a panel at the top and a panel at the bottom. The menu is still, when it drops down, categories and programs within the category. Differently from the earlier one, we saw the categories on the right. This one has the categories on the left. You customize and pick whichever one you want. Here's an example of the control center or control panel that you remember in Windows. A lot more options for taking care of customizing with how you want your computer to look and act. Slightly different. This is still Mate, but this one has a menu, and it's a panel at the bottom, nothing at the top. This one the menu, when you pop it up, has places and system, and then your favorites. If you want to see all the other applications, you can just click on all applications and see them by categories. But here, you put your favorites, you hardly ever have to go to the all applications. One of the newer ones kind of took a little look from the Mac with the little bar down at the bottom. And that's something that you can easily do. You can have a bar that goes clear across the bottom or only partway across centered. And so this version has your favorites down here at the bottom. The menu, this one is supposed to be a very clean looking menu. Again, we said that if your applications are in alphabetical order, people don't like that sometimes because they don't know what to look for. The Pantheon menu has two options. One, alphabetical, or you can click the button and put them in categories. So you can have the best of both. If you like them alphabetical, you can do that. If you need them in categories, you can do that. I want to point out too that these kind of windows look very similar to what you've seen in Windows. The file manager, your browser. One of the newest ones is called Budgie. Again, same kind of menu. Little different, maybe looks in the icon. Down at the bottom is your right-hand corner is your status bar, your system tray. But this one has developed a very unique pop-out menu from the side that contains your calendar, your volume controls, your maybe your link to your internet. Another whole unique flavor. This Budgie is not based on anything. It was something was created. It's an operating system called Solus, built from the ground up. Doesn't come from anything but itself. So my question, what we've looked at, does it look that much different than what Windows did? Everybody used to say, you know, Linux is so much different than Windows. I don't see it. I hope you saw something that you liked and could work with, and that you said to yourself, well, that didn't look that much different. It has pretty much the same things I've had. So now what we're going to do is we're going to see Linux in action, and I'll take you on a little visit on the one I particularly have. This is my choice. It's the distro called MX Linux, just to make sure everybody knows what MX. It's based on Debian, and I mentioned earlier Debian is one of the original distros that was started back in 93. This one uses a customized Xfce. That was the very lightweight one. But as you see, with some customizing and some tweaking, and I'm still tweaking it, it looks a lot different. Also, it came with software that you use for all your everyday work, but I've added a couple that I personally like, personal choice, looking better. So we're going to take a little look at that right now and see what Linux looks like. So this is my MX Linux, personal choice for a background. This version of Linux usually comes with a single panel on the left-hand side. And the reason for that is when we had square monitors back in the days, it didn't really matter where the panel went. It took away real estate from one of the sides. If you didn't know it, your Windows panel can move to any side of the screen. But now that we've gone to widescreen, we have usually more real estate on the sides than we do at the top. So this version comes with it on the left-hand side. And do you have to have it on the left-hand side? No, you can put it at the bottom, you can put it at the top, you can put it at the right. What I've done is I've added a second panel to the right so that I can customize my workflow to really benefit me. Down here at the bottom is our menu, then shortcut menus on the left for the most used icon or programs. The top left is the same as the Windows system bar or the system tray that has my shutdown button, clock, and other important programs that are system programs. On the right-hand side of the panel that I created, I have a second set of icons that are the ones that I would use secondary, let's say. Down at the bottom right-hand corner, one of the things that Windows just now in Windows 10 came to or developed was called these virtual desktops. Linux has had them, they call them workspaces, for many years. And so I can have different programs running on different desktops so that I don't have so many programs one on top of the other. And down at the very bottom, my trash can. And I've added a weather. I'm from Ohio, and you can see at this current time that I'm recording this, there's my temperature and all the different things for it. So that's right there at my click. If we look at the menu, this is the menu that comes with this version of Linux. And like everything else, if I didn't like this menu, I could probably download and install and use a different menu. I don't mind this one. I kind of like it. As you can see, I have my categories on the left and the programs that are in each of those on my right. So for example, if I click my internet category, these are all the programs that either came or that I've added a couple that deal with internet. If I want to look at my Office, this computer or this Linux comes with LibreOffice, which is probably the #1 Office suite. LibreOffice is cross-platform, which means it can be used on Windows, Macs, and Linux. If I go to graphics, there shows you the programs that do any kind of graphical work that I need. There's my scanner program, my document viewer, a photo organizer, all in there. I can also go and create a favorites. This one shows what I've recently used. And then if I want to go back to the other way where you have them all alphabetical order, I can go clear through these. Now, one of the nice things about this version that I'm using is that not only does it give me the name of the piece of software, it'll explain what that software uses. There is the system and settings. System would be the programs that run the computer. Settings is where I can change whatever I want. I also have just like in the Windows menu, the log out, shut down buttons. This is my file manager, very similar to the file manager or file explorer that we see in Windows. And it automatically pops up to mine. Over on the left-hand side, there are all my main ones, the ones that we see in most of our computers. Up here at the top is anything that device that's connected or any hard drives that are connected. There's one of my cloud services that's connected. And so it doesn't look that much difference, but then I can get around all my files. If I go to, let's say, pictures, My pictures are in folders, the pictures inside, pretty much the same. And then I have my mostly used icons. There's my Thunderbird mail program. I've got a couple of different web browsers. This is my program. Joplin is my equivalent to Evernote. There's my music program, sort of like an iTunes. And then my other programs that belong here. Oh, this is an interesting one. This little green squiggly line, that's my update manager. And as long as it's green, I'm up to date. If it turns red, it says there's some updates, security updates or a feature update that needs to be adjusted. And then on the other side, there are some other icons for secondary programs. And then of course the trash can at the bottom. So as you can see, it's not much different. If I do a right click, I have all the different options of what I can do on my desktop. I have both a link to my Dropbox, and I'm using a service called pCloud from my cloud service. There's even a way that if I wanted to, I could connect to OneDrive. I can also connect to Google Drive, but the Google Drive usually is connected right to the file manager, but I haven't set it up on this laptop. I'm not quite sure what else there is to show other than a program's a program. I can run a couple different programs on the same desktop. I can run them on multiple desktops like I have over here. But basically, Linux is Linux. So that's kind of a quick run through on Linux. I can add software. There's a very simple, I think this one should be noted for it. Password required. And what's nice about this distribution, here are the most popular categories, and inside those are the different programs. And so, for example, if I go to graphics, here are all the programs available. The ones that are light gray are already installed. The ones that are still black, I haven't installed yet. But these are very easy. It's just like coming to a store in categories. And all I have to do is click on them and then hit the button that says install, and it installs them. I'm going to quickly just go through. These are the slides for the people who don't have the video, just looking at the slideshow, talking about what I just did with you with what's around my desktop. Again, here's the application menu, and here's the file menu as we did before. I will say that this program that you're watching, the slideshow, was created with LibreOffice Impress, and I have a secondary program that takes screenshots and can add the boxes and arrows and lines to enhance it. And finally, just to show you that you can have multiple programs running, you can see the browser. I happen to be using Firefox. That's the one that's used by most Linux distributions. My word processor, that's the audio player. And of course, there are some games involved. And so I can have many programs running on the desktop, or making more sense to put them in different virtual workspaces. I'd like to thank you for viewing this presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you, as a Windows 7 user or the friend of a Windows 7 user, see that you have options moving forward with operating systems. And hopefully you now have a better understanding of what Linux has to offer you, and maybe we'll take Linux for a test drive. As I said, it's free. You can test as many as you want. You can test it by yourself. You don't have to have the salesman who would be riding along with you in a car while you test drive it. And again, you do not even do anything to your computer other than you put it in the thumb drive or the optical drive, the DVD, and just boot to it, and it runs right off of the external device. In fact, I know of many people who run it that way all the time, so that there's nothing on their computer that they can track them back to. If you have any questions, you can contact me at my email address, jakenn2008@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to correspond with you, answer any questions that you have, make any kind of suggestions you might want. If you've enjoyed this presentation, please let APCUG know. There's feedback if you go to the website. If you like these kinds of presentations where there are videos that you can use for your club, please tell them you like that, and make sure that you tell us what kind of videos that you'd like that we don't have. Go to the website and check the Speakers Bureau and see all the different people who are willing to present to your club. If they happen to live close by, they might come to you. Most of us live far away from other clubs, so we can do this over the internet and be there almost in person and be live. So thank you very much. Good luck with your Windows 7 in the future, and please give Linux a try.